And it's yours now. Thank you, Nicholas.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be here sharing with you. So this is actually kind of fun. We're starting to see if we can do a seed to seal presentation. Starting a little bit by explaining that quality commitment that is so important to us and that really guarantees what you have in each and every product of ours. But also we want to share this while explaining a little bit about all of our corporate farms and all of our different locations. So for those who don't know me, my name is Nicholas Landel. I'm originally I grew up on the French farm surrounded by lavender fields. My father actually started working with Gary when I was 6 months old. So I've been with Young Living for, I will say, all my life. But growing up in that region of France, surrounded by lavender, my father was working at a distillery, all of that, I really started just discovering the essential oils from a very young age, discovering not only, what they can be used for, but more importantly, how to produce them, how to grow them. And so now several years back, I took over the French farm as the farm manager. But now I'm also helping in all of our European, Middle East, and African farms. And as the director of all of those locations, I get to work really with incredible people everywhere that have the passion necessary to really grow and produce a beautiful product. So I want to show you, this is a picture of Simiane-la-Rotonde. This is actually where the French farm is located. Now, in front of the village that you can see in the back, we actually have this beautiful true population lavender field. And so today I'm going to share with you, like I said, a little bit about seed to seal, a little bit about the French farm, and I want to use the French farm as the example for what I'm going to share with you about seed to seal. And I think really understanding what this field, this lavender field that you see in this picture represents is going to be crucial to understand that part. Because the part that I'm going to share about seed to seal today is seeds and the importance of seeds. You'll see that each step in seed to seal, I say, holds equal importance. The way that Gary said it is that in seed to seal, there's no separation, which implies really that everything is as important as the other steps. So you can't expect to have a quality product if you don't, really control the farming side, or if you don't know what you're doing on the distillation side. So each step holds equal importance. And actually, to that extent, I can even go a little bit, I would say, further. Even prior to the seed, there is something extremely important, and that's the person that actually will plant that seed. One of the things that I've noticed traveling and working with all these farmers around the globe is truly the dedication and passion that you need in order to produce a quality products. And so a way to see this is a little bit, you can't expect to have a product that does good if it's destroying of the people that produces it or destroying of the planet that produces it. And so in order for all of this to actually function, we need to make sure that, first of all, the person that is going to be either our partner or even our employees on our corporate farms have that passion and dedication to building a quality product, to building really something that is going to have the benefit. Now, in order to do that, we need to make sure that they're provided with what they need to have a good life, feed their families, and so we need to protect them as well. And that implies also protecting the environment in which we can grow those plants and produce that product, because if it's, I'll use the word sustainable, if it's not sustainable, meaning that if you're growing the plant and harming the soil in which it grows, slowly and surely you'll just degrade that quality over time, and also you'll take away the capacity for those people or those communities to actually grow this plant efficiently. And so we need to englobe all of that. In seed to seal, there's no separation. So taking care of the people, taking care of the environment in which this plant grows is crucial. Now, let's move on to seed. So, like I said, there's no separation in seed to seal. Every step holds equal importance, but we start with a seed. And actually, this is not that common anymore in, I would say, most modern agriculture. If you look, so growing from seed is the way that it works in nature. You have a plant, it grows, it blooms, it gets pollinated, it produces a seed. Well, all the pollinations are different. Some plants auto-pollinate, but you have a pollination usually occurring. It produces a seed. This seed will then fall on the floor and will actually grow into new plant. So that would be, I would say, the normal cycle of plants in nature. Now, in modern agriculture, there is other ways that people have grown plants. And this other way is called cloning. Now, it's not anything that is fancy or done in laboratory. Actually, if you've ever cut, I always say a basil stem, put it in water to grow roots, or a tree branch, put it in water to grow roots, and replanted that branch or that stem, you're not actually making a new plant, you're doing a clone. So it's going to be a replicate of the original plant. Cloning is as simple as that. But cloning means that you're not producing a new plant and you're just replicating that. So I'll explain a little bit what cloning is after, but you need to know there's two different ways that we could grow plants. Now, in seed to seal, the quality commitment that we have at Young Living, we say seed to seal. And so that means that we collect seeds and we plant those seeds to build a field. So actually, that would be what we would call for lavender, population lavender. Usually what I say, it's kind of my joke, but if you have a mommy lavender and a daddy lavender and they love each other very, very much, they're going to have a beautiful baby, which is going to be a seed. Now, if you look around at everyone listening to this talk, you'll notice that nobody looks alike. Nobody is exactly the same. That is because we all come from a love story like this one. And when you have a seed, the same as us, each seed is going to grow in a very different plant. It's going to grow a different plant and make it unique. And when I say unique, I mean it's going to grow into a plant that has its own color, its own size, and that produces its own unique essential oil, its own smell. Each of us are different. Each of the plants in the wild are different as well, because they all come from that different seed. And we are called a population because of our uniqueness. And so lavender, we actually gave it the same name. Lavender, when it's planted from seeds, we call it population lavender. And if you look at a population lavender field, because all and every plants are unique in there, you'll really see this change in colors, these changes in sizes. And if you analyze each different plant, you'd actually see that they all produce a different essential oil. Now, the oil is not, always drastic difference, but there's slight differences because of the uniqueness of each plant. So in the wild, this is something that, it's always good to know, but in the wild, you can find wild lavender from 800 to 1,400 meters. Actually, I've seen some a little bit higher, even in altitude, but that is kind of the range where you would normally find wild lavender. Now, when I say this, remember, we're talking about true lavender, Lavandula angustifolia, because there's actually many different varieties of lavender. So that becomes a little bit more complicated because it's not the way that they're being planted. It's not about seeds or clone. It's just different varieties. There's different varieties of mini plants, of thyme, and all this. Lavender, for example, I'll give you another one, Lavandula latifolia, which we don't have at Young Living, you don't know it. But Lavandula latifolia is a lavender that is mostly found in Spain. It's a lavender that is much, much more coniferous. It's a completely different variety. And so on the back of the label, if you peel and you look at the ingredient deck, at Young Living, you will always have the botanical name. This is what I said. The lavender you have at Young Living, Lavandula angustifolia, true lavender for the common name, is written on the back. And this is also something that's very important because this tells you really what oil you have inside. Amongst, you need to know a lot of other different things. For example, seed or clone, but it's not written on the label. But at least knowing what variety of plant you have in your bottle is important because this is how you determine also the usage. This is how you know, for example, that Lavandula angustifolia has very little camphor. Lavandula latifolia would have a lot more camphor. This was completely changed, I would say, the usage of the oil, making latifolia, spike lavender is the common name, more something you would use like eucalyptus, for example. And so contrasting the usage is very different. But back to our lavender. Growing from seed means that you would have a population lavender. So if you remember, I showed you the picture of the village of Simian and the field in front. I told you this is a true population lavender field. True meaning Lavandula angustifolia. Population meaning grown from seeds and lavender. And so it's those little details that are important. But let's continue on. So like I said, planting from seeds will make each plant very unique. But there's another way that we could grow. We could grow what we would call a clonal lavender. So in contrast from a population lavender that is seed, we could grow a clonal lavender. And so how would we do this? I'll explain in I would say more simple way, even though it's not exactly done like this. But let's say I want to find a lavender that will produce a lot more essential oil than usual. So often when you do what we would call a selection, you would select for the yield, for the amount of oil that plant can produce. That's going to be the problem of its own. We'll discuss this after. So I would say the easy and simple way that this could be done, you would take some seeds, you would grow little plants, and you'll plant a field of lavender. If you started from seed, it's population. Every plant is different and unique in that field. You would walk that field and you would be looking for the biggest plant you could find. If you find the biggest plant that holds the most flowers, you're going to improve the yield because 90% of the oil in lavender, every plant is different, but 90% of the oil in lavender is in those flowers and in the little pods that hold the flower. So if you look closely at the image that I have, you have, I don't know if we can see my pointer, but you have a flower coming out of the little pod. 90% is going to be on the pods and flower. So all of the oil is there. The most flowers you have, the most oil you'll have in a field. And so if you walk a population lavender field planted from seeds, and you look around and you find one plant that really has more flowers, that is a bigger plant, and you say this one. So you select it by saying this one and choosing that plant. You've selected. Maybe you've heard the word selection. That's in the agricultural way. You select that plant and then we're going to clone it. Now it's not done like this, but imagine that we cut all of the stems, all of the little stems. We can actually cut them multiple times. We replant each stem. We're going to grow the plant from those stem cuttings. And we're going to grow all of the same plants. So while we do this, we could plant an entire field of lavender from that one selected plant. Cutting from the stems means no seeds, means clonal, so they'll look exactly the same. So you can produce a lavender field that has the exact same plants, same color, same size, producing the same essential oil. And because you walked that field and you looked for the biggest plant with the most flowers, you're also going to have a much bigger yield. Actually, I've seen contrasting population from seed to clonal lavender. I've seen some clones fields give 6 times more essential oil than population lavender. That means that for the same size of field, for the same amount of plants, for the same work, for the same energy cost in the tractor and the time cost managing that field, when you distill it, you get 6 times more essential oil. So if you're working for an industry, let's say the perfume industry, that really only cares about the pricing and the similarity in smell every year, the farmer is going to be pushed to do clonal, because by planting clone, like I just said, it's going to cost him the same amount of money to plant, grow, harvest, and distill the lavender, but he's going to get 6 times more essential oil than if he had planted from seeds population. And so if you're only interested in pricing, clonal lavender would be the way to go. And then in perfume, usually they always want the same exact smell every time. Clonal, being a clone, produce the same exact oil. And so there's no variation there. So for the perfume world, clonal lavender is better. But we're not in the perfume world, so I'll explain why population lavender is much, much more interesting for us. Now, obviously, you don't have to select and clone lavender only for the yield. You could actually select and clone lavender for a lot of different things. You could, for example, want to grow lavender at a lower altitude or in a different country, for example, than where the lavender usually grows, that has different climate, different soils. So there would be 2 approaches there. You could bring some seeds, plant them in that new country that have a different ecosystem than where the lavender usually grows. The plants would grow, some would not survive because they're incapable of surviving these changes in conditions, but maybe a couple plants would be able to survive properly, and maybe 1 or 2 actually grow very well under those conditions. Growing from seeds means everyone's different, so there might be some plants that can adapt. And so if so, you'd select them, you'd clone them, and you'd have a variety of lavender that can grow in that specific country. That would be the fast approach. Another way would be to use natural selection, where you do exactly the same thing. You go to a different country, you take some seeds, you plant those seeds. The plants that can survive die. The plants that can would survive. You would collect only the seeds from the plants that survived. And so little by little, over 10, 20 years, you'd be capable of building a population lavender that can survive in those different conditions. Now, most of the lavenders you see in the world actually would be, if they were grown in a different condition or a different country, would be clones. And I'll explain a little bit why. But so now I hope that you can understand that growing from seeds builds unique plants that are called population, and selecting and cloning a plant builds a clone where all of the plants are exactly the same. If you look at a picture, if you type lavender France on Google, most of the picture you'll see are maybe prettier than this, but you'll notice that really it's what we see most of the times, those fields that only have lavender, no weeds, and are just like a sea of purple that go forever. Same size, same color. Obviously, I hope you understood this is clones. When you have exactly the same color, the same size, this is a clonal lavender or a lavandine, but that's a different story. Lavandine is a clone as well, so it's a clone. And no weeds, we'll talk about that. But what's important to understand is that if you come to a Young Living lavender field, it will not look like this. I'm sorry for the pictures, we can take you elsewhere, but our fields are very different. And this is because of our quality commitment. So what's important to understand is we grow lavender from seeds because in our quality commitment, we say seed to seal and not clone to seal. And this is important in two ways. First, there's the sustainability of the lavender. Like I said, in seed to seal, we want it to be a virtuous cycle. We want everything the best that we can. Obviously, you know, we work in different countries and different conditions. There's never any perfection, but we're really trying to continuously improve and work really better to protect the communities that grow the plant, the environment in which it grows, and to follow this quality commitment to the best of our ability. And that's really important. But there's two sides why it's important for us to grow population. There's the sustainability, the environment, and then there's the quality of the oil. So I'll start with the sustainability. When you grow lavender from seeds or a plant from seeds, what happens is when there's a change in the environment, in the ecosystem of the plant. So let's say we have 1 year with a very strong drought, meaning very little water. A lavender field that is planted from seed has only unique plants. During this drought, some of the plants cannot survive. It's just they're incapable of surviving with that little water, but most will survive. And when we collect the seeds, it's, you know, seeds from the plants that survived, which means that the plant that died, there's a natural selection happening. The plants die, the ones that survive produce the seeds that we collect. And so this natural selection is very important because as time passes, the environment in which we grow our plants is evolving, is continuously evolving. And actually in France, we've been seeing heavier and heavier droughts, less and less water. And so us gathering, you know, the seeds and replanting those seeds means we're allowing for natural selection to happen. We're allowing the plants to evolve. There's less water. The plants that are capable of surviving in less water are capable of actually being, you know, producing the seeds which we plant. And so this allows really, I would say, a sustainable approach where we're allowing those plants to evolve. When you go from clonal, you're not allowing this because you're always, the one plant you selected is the one you're continuously replicating and replanting every year. Actually, most of the clonal lavender that I've seen in France are 40, 50 years old, which means that this moment where someone walked a population field and chose one plants, that was 50 years ago. So 50 years ago, they selected those plants and they've been replicating them. They've been cloning them since. The plant is exactly the same plant as it was 50 years ago. So the plant was not capable of adapting or changing, even though the ecosystem, the environment in which this plant grows, has changed. And this is something crucial because if you look at modern agriculture, you can look at clones around the world, but the bananas that we have are all clones. The corn that we have is all corn. Many of the, I would say, big, heavy agriculture around the world are growing from clones. And if you look a little bit, I invite you to look on YouTube, for example, a disease that there's on our bananas. You'll see that because it's a clone, because it's just a replicate of all the same plants. If this plant, you know, is, I would say, a little bit more like it's not really strong to resist a specific disease, because all of the plants are the same, that disease is going to spread like wildfire and just destroy all of that, all of those plantations. If you have a population, each plant being unique, meaning one can be a little bit more susceptible, I can't say this word, sorry, more weak to that disease, but one would be stronger. And so this plant would die, this plant would survive, allowing once again for a natural selection to happen. But most of the modern agriculture actually is on clones because they can get better yields, they can do all sorts of different things. So they love to select, they love to clone because they can get more money, or well, it's not fair to say this, but because this is what the market also demands. Like I said, the perfume industry would rather have a lavender clone than a population because they want a low cost and a similar smell. Now we want to take care of the communities, the environment, and we want a specific quality for our oils, so we don't want that. What's important to understand, oh, sorry, I forgot. So now let's talk about the quality of the essential oil itself. When you have a lavender field that each plant in it, so 1 hectare, 10,000 square meters, 1 hectare of lavender would hold 12,000 different plants. Each of those plants, when it's planted from seeds, are unique. They each produce a unique essential oil. And when we harvest this and distill, we bring the little differences of each plant all together into that oil. So we combined a lot of, I would say, different variety almost. So it brings really a richness, a strength to that oil that is incredible. Even more so because the clones that we have, most of the times we're only selected for the yield. And so never for the quality of the oil, never for a usage, never, all of that. So it's because they produce more oil, but they never look at, is that oil a quality interesting for something? With a population, because everything is so diverse, you have that richness. Now, we did a calculation. I think in one bottle, just to give you, it's not, don't get me wrong, but in one bottle of Young Living lavender, you'll have a blend of about 4 million different plants, different lavender plants. Now, I'm not saying that one bottle holds the oil from 4 million plants. I'm not saying that 4 million plants would build only one bottle. What I'm saying is that we blend different fields together in order to try and control the quality to where we want. That's the only thing we can do, because working with nature and population means there's always big variation, but we want to guarantee a quality. The only thing we can do is we analyze each field of essential oil and we blend certain together, which gives us, let's say, 1,000 kilos of lavender essential oil. So like a lot of different bottles. But because we mix all of this together, it means that inside this major batch, we have 4 million different plants mixed together. And we then fill many bottles from that. But that means that in one bottle, you still have the blend of 4 million different plants. If you were to have a clonal lavender, that bottle would hold one plant. So contrasting this is I think important, because like I said, with population, you have the sustainability, but the quality of the oil. And what always, usually is incredible to hear is we at Young Living have about 80% of the world's population lavender. So we are still growing lavender from seeds because of our quality commitment, even though I would say the pricing and the amount of work is greater to grow population than clones. But we truly believe that this is the best quality lavender you can get, is growing it from seeds. Actually, this is the best quality oil in general you can get, is growing the plants the way that it naturally grows. But we are one of the last to believe this, because 80% of the lavender in the world that is population is us. And not because we're buying it all and trying to avoid anybody else from getting it. No, it's because we're the last ones to have that will, even though it will cost a lot more to actually grow lavender from seeds. Even though it's going to cost more, but we know that it's going to be the best way. So if you go elsewhere on the market, it's almost certain that what you'll have is clonal lavender. And this is not something that you can differentiate from the label. This is why we have a quality commitment that explains those things. And this is why I'm here today sharing about this, because even though we're just at the start of the quality commitment with seed, you'll understand that it's really important to start from a seed if you want a quality oil and if you want to protect the nature in which it's growing. And so we want lavender to be available, in 40, 50 years, being able to grow it, to still grow it in good conditions. And so we need to, I would say, invest by growing it from seeds, but also we want the best quality oil. So the best choice is to still grow population lavender. So Gary overall has been a major savior because in France, we have really the ability to grow lavender from seeds because this is the natural habitat of Lavandula angustifolia. So if you look, the map of our farms around the world, you notice that they're always in, I would say, very weird locations. They're away from cities, often in the middle of nowhere. But what's important to understand is that we grow the plants almost all the times. There's some exceptions, but we grow the plants in their natural habitat. So if you walk around the farm in the south of France, if you walk on the hills in the forest around the farm, you'll find a lot of lavender growing naturally in its wild habitat. And this is why we have the farm located there, because this is where lavender grow. It's easier to grow a plant in its natural habitat because you're not fighting nature. The plant is already used to growing in this type of soil, in those, in this climate. And so trying to move lavender elsewhere would demand adapting the lavender, or you having to change the soil, add, watering, add all sorts of things in order to allow that plant to grow there. And that would be more difficult. We want to work with nature. Now, if you look at the other lavender coming from other countries, you'll notice that actually it's all clones, because that's the easier way to change and just find lavender that can grow, and you can get even bigger yields. And so this is also why Gary really wanted to remain in France, grow the lavender in its natural habitat, and have that quality that comes from being a population, a seeded lavender. I walked, just to show you a little bit, I walk inside one of our population lavender fields, and I picked the stems off of 5 plants that were next to each other. And I put them on the ground and I took a picture, and it doesn't show the height here, but it shows the shape, the color difference that you can find. And I just wanted to show you this because you have from light blue to deep purple. We even have completely white lavender that has white flowers. So you go from, I would say, the most pale white to the deepest would be the deepest blue or the deepest purple. And this is, this diversity. This shows how each plant is very different, very unique. I think it's nice to see. And if you do come and visit, you'll notice that we also have weeds growing in our fields. We have cover crops, but this is for another day because that's cultivation. I'm remaining on seeds. This is also to show you a little bit the sizing difference. I went and took some wild lavender. I took some clonal lavender, and I took some lavandine. Lavandine I'm not going to share with you today, but lavandine is just a hybrid between 2 varieties of lavender, and it's cloned as well because it's sterile, because it's a hybrid. Lavandine is an oil that's also good to understand. I wrote the botanical names at the bottom because if ever you do encounter lavandine, it would be good for you to smell, just to see the difference. But anyways, lavandine is a clone, and it's one that is also grown in the south of France and in many countries. But I wanted to show you the size, and more specifically, look at the amount of flowers. If you look at wild lavender, it really has, I would say, from this picture, 4 or 5 different layers. We say layers, so layers of flowers on the stem. If you look at clonal lavender, you have a lot more flowers. And if you look at lavandine, you have even more. So this is to show the yields and the amount of oil you can get from cloning lavender. So selecting one lavender that is bigger, that has more flower, and all of this. Sorry. If we go back to that initial picture, I wanted to show you this again, of our beautiful village of Simian-la-Rotonde in the south of France, and that picture of our population lavender field. You'll see that there's really this difference in color from that field, different in sizes. It's a lot more chaotic. I find it more beautiful because I'm passionate about population lavender, but it's more chaotic. This is population lavender. This is, you know, if you drive by in the south of France and you want to know if it's a clone or a population, you just try and see if there's those changes in colors and changes in size. And if you do, you would really know that this is a population. And if the field looks more like this, then you would know that it's a clonal lavender or lavender, but once again. So this was, you know, to explain how important seed is. It's the start. It's barely the start of seed to seal, but just that really focus shows the importance of starting from a seed. Now, there are certain plants that to this day cannot fully be started from seeds. Lavandine is one of them. Lavandine, being a hybrid, has no seeds and the pollen is sterile. So that implies that the only way you could grow lavandine is by doing a clone. So there are some, I would say, there's some exceptions, but every time it's possible, we'll grow the plants from seeds. And this is not just on lavender. I'm using lavender because my history is on the French farm. But if you go to Croatia and you look at the helichrysum that we grow on the farm there, all of those, actually the nursery is on the farm in Croatia. So you can go to the nursery, see all of the starters, and you can see that they collect the seeds, they grow them into starters. What I'm holding in my hand right there is what we would call a starter. So you plant the seeds inside those little, I want to speak French right now, mottes de terre, those little amount of soil. You grow this into a small plant. And then if I go back to one of my very first pictures, then we would plant with a tractor. This would be a starter. We would plant it one by one and create a row. So even though it started by seed, we can still make those rows of lavender or those rows of helichrysum. So once again, population is not just for lavender. This is a population helichrysum. But if you go to our farms, you'll find population of everything because we would grow from seeds, and almost all of our farms now have their own nurseries. In France, it's not the case yet. We're partnering with nurseries in the same region that grow those starters. So we collect the seeds, we bring them those seeds. They grow a little starter like this one, but for lavender, we get those starters, we plant them in the soil and all of that. Because I wanted to share, you know, a little bit about the seed part, I also want to share a little bit about the farm part. So the farm in France, I would say, is very different than any of our other farms. Actually, each of our farm are very unique. This is also something that's incredible, is that when you visit, you know, some of our farms, you'll see the similarities, and yet you'll see the difference that come from the location, the culture, the way that the farm was established, the plant that it grows. Each plant being unique in the way that it's grown, harvested, and distilled means we need to adapt the farm to it. Each location being unique and each culture being unique, we adapt as well. But overall, we want to follow our quality commitment. But you'll understand that as we go into other parts of Seed to Seal. The farm in France, because of its history, works as a co-op. Now, the reason is when Gary first came to France, it was really the start. It was before Young Living, it was the start. Gary had a lot of knowledge on the usage of essential oil and on a lot of different things, but he wanted to learn how, I would say, the farmers in France were distilling, how they were growing the lavender and everything surrounding it. And so he came to visit my father, like I said, when I was 6 months old, and he started working with a lot of different farmers in this area, learning from them, understanding how they distill, how the distillery was built, all of those details. And for those who have met Gary, you'll understand that he truly was a people person, someone that would connect with others, find passionate people that had, I would say, a similar vision, or that had the same passion, at least, for essential oils. And so he made a lot of friends in the south of France. Actually, just a side note, what's incredible from now my position of working with all of our farms in those different regions, the first thing I'm noticing when I'm traveling is I find those people. I found, those historical relationship that Gary built, for example, in Oman with Dr. Suhail on sacred frankincense. Um, that that passionate, dedicated to the best quality possible oil, passionate to protecting the region and the communities that grow it, those types of personalities, I find it while I travel, because those were people that Gary started working with, and like-minded people tend to kind of connect to each other. And so anyways, so in France, it was a similar way, where Gary actually started making friendships with some of those farmers. And so several years after that, when finally, it was decided, let's open the first Young Living farm internationally, which was France, Gary didn't want to move away from those friends and those farmers in this region, and it was already well established, with lavender. So instead, what was done is, it was all of those farmers came together in order to follow that quality commitment, in order to work on population lavender. And that formed the way that the French farm functions as a co-op. So we own land in France. We're part of the distillery, but a lot of the lavender is grown by other farmers that are now, I would say, second generation. So the fathers were working with Gary originally, and now it's their sons or their children that took over. So it's quite incredible. Some of those farmers are also, fifth or fourth generation of lavender farmers. So there's also a humongous amount of knowledge that is necessary to grow a quality lavender, because those who can do the best jobs are those who are on site, observing, caring, understanding really what's happening, the type of soil, and how best to grow. In the position that I am as director, if you think I hold the knowledge of all of the types of soil, all of the culture, the geopolitics, how each plant grow, it's impossible. What I need is to rely on, like I said, passionate people. If I want to understand and and do a good job, I need to be helpful to those people. So Dr. Suhail in Oman, for example, he holds that passion, that knowledge of the region, of the soil, of the plant, and I need to rely on him to bring us that quality of oil. But it's about working together so that all of this can continue. So all of our farms are different, and all of our farms now usually hold planting event and harvesting event. And I think that it's something that's really important, because something you'll understand about our quality commitment is, in order for it to actually make any sense, it needs to be fully transparent. And so I always say there's three different forms of audits at Young Living. We have corporate audits, so it would be the quality, the compliance staff that audit the different farms or suppliers. There would be, sorry, I have this weird thing when I make gestures. It would be, we have external auditors that will do audits, but the third one would be you. By coming to all of our farm, learning about what it is we do, learning how we work, and learning about the passion and dedication, it brings a transparency and a validity to that quality commitment. And so I feel like it's important for you, first of all, to know that you have the freedom to visit any of our farms anytime you want. Actually, we have a website. It's younglivingfarmtours.com. This will allow you to visit all of our corporates farm for free. You can just choose a location, choose a date, click a reservation, and you'll have a tour. Some of our partner farms are on there. They're slowly being back on there. Some will demand and charge a small fee for visiting the location because they're partners. So they need to have, staff just for you. They need to make sure that you're staying safe because it's not a Young Living location. So that has a little cost so they can. But all of the corporate farms are free for a visit. And I really, really hope that you'll have the ability, if you haven't, to go and visit at least one of our farms. And like I said, for those who have been, each farm is very unique because of the history, because of the plant. And so if you can go to other ones, you'll see also how different and yet how this quality commitment is still present and similar in every location. If you look a little bit through, I would say, the way which is interesting for Young Living, because we have partner farms as well. We have seed to sale suppliers certified. The staff that works on the farm, the expertise that we hold on the farm. So, for example, the agronomists that we have on different farms, the lab technicians that do the analysis, all of those become experts. And we can utilize them to also go and audit, work at the different partnerships, improve their processes, or improve a lot of different things, and also make sure that they're following the quality commitment that we hold. I hope you know a little bit more now on France. I hope you know a little bit more now on lavender and seed, and the seed part of seed to seal. And I'm very thankful that I get to share this with you. But like I said, if you have the opportunity to come to one of our farms, please do. It holds a lot more power when you see it for yourself. It's also a very motivational thing for us. When you work hard at something and you have someone that comes and share how much they love a product that you make, that's very motivating for the farmers. And, sometimes when it's 4 a.m., it's cold in the winter and you have to go outside and work a field, you need a little bit of motivation. And so you coming also shares this. Thank you really so much for taking the time to join us today. And if you have any questions, let me know.